Happy Friday, everyone. I am very excited about today's episode. I'm having on a friend of mine and somebody that I met through a mutual friend. We're going to have Adrianne Meldrum on the show and talk about something that I wish was around when I was a kid, because I would have had a much better childhood and probably been more successful as an entrepreneur earlier on in my life. But in just a moment, we're going to bring Adrianne on and tune in and listen. This is going to be a really exciting show. So welcome to the show, Adrianne. How are you?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you taking time to jump on and share your story with everyone. And we met at Alex Charfen's Simple Operations event, and we met at the event in person finally, which was awesome to have in-person events again. But I remember when you shared inside of his mastermind, you did a 10-minute presentation on one of the virtual masterminds, and I was just really impressed with how you think and how you show up as a leader. And you're one of the leaders in my network that I really respect and admire. So I appreciate you taking time here today.
Thanks, Gabe. The feelings are mutual.
Awesome. So we'll start out like I always do on this one and ask you, when did you first realize that you were an entrepreneur?
You know what? Kind of late in life. I'll tell you this. I'll try to tell you the abbreviated story. Growing up, my dad was a visionary, and I didn't have those words to describe it because it looked insane to me. Because I watched him vacillate between being homeless and being successful. There was very rarely like an in between for him, but big visionary. So I would have never have said when I was younger, oh yeah, I'm interested in business, because that looked like poverty to me. So I didn't want to do that. I'm pretty good with kids, and my sister encouraged me to go into education, which I did. And it started out in education, teaching kids with autism. Loved the small group environment, loved working with kids one-on-one. And I thought that when I moved into the public system, because that was not at a school, that was like a private school. When I went to the public school, I thought it's going to be like this. Nope, furthest thing from the truth. It's not like that. It's so broken. It's so disordered. And that was not where I wanted to be. So I left and I was crushed. I felt like I was lied to about what education was, because there's a huge disconnect. And I think a lot of teachers can resonate with this, between what you're taught in school and the research, but also that research doesn't always make it with you to the schools. They're not doing that. And there is a sizable gap between what we know works from research, and seeing it implemented in the schools. But then they were also teaching things that didn't work back then. So anyway, so I kind of fumbled around and started doing tutoring for a long time. And everything I did, I tried to avoid hiring a team, even though I'd get really full and my life was chaotic and I'm tutoring on the sidelines of football practice with my kids. I was still determined, like, I'm building a business without people, because I hate like managing people. I thought I would be terrible at it. And so at one point I realized this tutoring on the sidelines doesn't work for me anymore. And I started creating these highly engaging videos teaching what's called multisensory math. And it's a highly engaging way of learning math that goes through all the senses. And it was really fun. And so I started making these videos, and parents kept telling me over and over, I don't want to do this with my kid. I just want you to teach my kid. Like, why won't you let me, sign my kid up? They were really frustrated because they could see they needed this, but I wasn't willing to expand because I didn't want to hire a team, right? So fast forward to 18, I'm at Funnel Hacking Live in Florida. Gabe, did you go? Were you there that year?
I think so, because I've been to so many of those that I can't remember the years anymore. But I'm pretty sure
it was like at Disney World, and Alex came on the stage, and I had just a terrible failure of a launch again. I kept revamping these videos, and I felt like such a failure going to this thing. Like, I'm crazy, certifiably crazy. There's something wrong with me. I can't get this to work. But I cared about that outcome. Like I wanted multisensory math to get into the hands of as many kids as possible, but I didn't want it to be more than just me. I just wanted to work alone, right? And so I get there, Alex speaks, and he says, first thing he says, I'm going to tell you today if you're really an entrepreneur. And he went through like this litmus test, the EPT personality style. And my cheeks just went so red, Gabe. Like I was sitting there with my heart pounding, like, here's the moment. Here's where I'm going to learn I am not an entrepreneur. But by the end of the test, as you can guess, Gabe, I like am off the charts. Yep, you are totally there. And he said, like at the end, there's nothing wrong with you. And it was like I was like bawling by the end, like what? He's, he was influential to me embracing that I am an entrepreneur. So at that event, and I've told Alex this story, but I overheard him talking about what it takes to build a company that like can ride the rocket to the top. And I believe in a higher being and a God. And I swear I heard a voice say, that's going to be you. And I was just, what? Me? I'm supposed to take multisensory math to the world, like what? And I believe it. And I hopped up and I just took off and I have never stopped since. So I went home, decided to get over my fear of hiring, and I hired my first person that like 2 months later. And now we're a team of 16. So we're doing the work. It's so much fun. I'm totally an entrepreneur and I love what we do. And I get so excited to take this method to the masses.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. And yeah, I had a really similar experience when I heard Alex share that, and I can't remember which one it was at because I think he's done it a couple times at Funnel Hacking. But I finally felt like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me, and I had felt like there was something wrong with me my entire life up until that point. I remember stepping out and calling my partner Rachel and going like, man, I can't wait to tell you about this. This talk I heard, and like it was really liberating for me too. So that's definitely something we have in common there. That was a huge shift for me. Even though I'd been struggling as an entrepreneur up at that point, I don't think I really embraced it the right way.
Yeah.
And it's hard when if you don't make something part of your identity, it's really hard to be successful at it.
Yes, exactly. It was definitely a crystallizing moment. I personally count that as my first day of business, even though I was piddling around with it before.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so I've had the opportunity to meet and talk to your operator, Heather, and she is just like such an ambassador for you guys. I can tell what kind of leader you are just by interacting with her, and she's awesome to be around. And like I mentioned in the intro, I wish that I would have known about this, or my parents would have, or like I would have had exposure to this as a kid, because part of a lot of the work I've had to do over the years is, unlearning, or I don't even know the right word, like just removing the beliefs that I'm, stupid and I'm not good at things and all those types of things. And a big part of that came from when I was handed, an algebra half, or I can't remember what the textbook was, and I just couldn't figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a huge negative for me. And so I love what you're doing, because I think when, at least for me as a kid, when I was struggled at something or was told that I, wasn't good at it, or I just wasn't smart enough to handle it, I mean, that affects a lot of areas in life. And on top of that, I've over the years finally learned I am pretty good at the math I need for business anyway, but I know I missed out on opportunities just because I wasn't taught the right way.
Yes.
And so if you can share some more specific examples of what multisensory math is, because I think I have a concept of it, but I obviously didn't go through it. And my son's in Montessori, so I know they utilize some of what you probably do. But if you can just explain exactly how that works. So I know for me, it was hard as a kid, and I know there's plenty of parents out there that, don't have kids that are struggling in math, and I would love to learn about what you have to offer.
Sure. So multisensory math is an approach. It's not like a program or a curriculum. So like if a parent went and Googled it, that's not what they would find. So it's an approach that you apply to already established and made curriculum or textbooks. It doesn't matter in that sense. So what the approach is we're using multiple sensory points to get information in at the same time. So it's simultaneous. So in the past, learning styles like visual, auditory, kinesthetic, tactile were believed to be like you learned in one and maybe a few of the others. But really, the science has debunked that that's the truth, that all of us use all of our senses to learn. And so when we're using all of them at the same time, it helps tap into different parts of the memory and different parts of the brain and increases the access and the likelihood that the student's going to connect with the subject at hand. So we see this multisensory approach in reading. It's really got started with Orton Gillingham. The OG reading method is something that is happening out there. It's older than the method that I'm doing. And it also is part of structured literacy. And then here I am on the flip side, on the math side, doing similar kinds of things. And we focus on language kind of the same way they do. But we're teaching the students in multiple modalities. So you'll see us up, moving out of our seat. We're touching manipulatives with our hands. And we're following a very specific plan. And that plan is research-based. And so with all of this combination, the student goes from that belief, I'm stupid, I can't do this, I'm not, worth messing around with anymore. They kind of start giving up. A lot of them in third grade. I bet you probably remember the moment, Gabe, that you remember. I'm bad at math. Every adult that I interact with knows the moment, right? And the kids do too. And so they go from that belief to, oh my gosh, I can learn this. Then it turns into, well, what else can I learn? And they start to see the value that they have. It just starts to ooze into their life. And so what we hear from parents is all of their grades start getting better because they get more curious, the confidence is boosted, they view education differently than they used to.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you're right. I think fortunately I was able to unlearn a bunch of things that I shouldn't have learned and discover that I love learning, and I was able to overcome so much of it, and that's definitely the huge shift. And you're right. I mean, I still remember times when I was told that I was stupid and I didn't get it and I just had to work harder but I was like, well, what I've tried has not worked and I've been trying it for a really long time. So why is doing more of what's not working going to help me? Yeah. And so I think that's so awesome because you're right. It definitely has a massive impact on self-esteem and I'm not surprised to hear you say like it helps in other areas of their education as well. And that's really cool.
And I think that when you become aware of how your brain learns, it helps you advocate for the rest of your life for yourself. So for me, people love to make this assumption that Adrianne must be a math whiz. No, the reason why I'm in this work is because I struggled in school too. I had to cheat in order to pass my math facts test because I could not recall the information that way, like this rote memorization that we all experience. Like getting the gold foil stars was not something I was used to getting on my own. So my friend and I, we would like team up, right? And we would cheat because we both sucked at memorization. And over time, it really impacted me. I walked around believing I was really bad at math. And it wasn't until I had a teacher intervene in middle school that it kind of helped me see, you could do this if you're leaning into how you learn. And so even as an adult now, I don't like spreadsheets. And as you know, as a business owner, spreadsheets are part of our work. Yeah. And so I'm constantly working at how can I make this visual? How can I make this in a way that makes sense to me? And so we work really hard at that in our company to make sure we're presenting data in a way that's friendly to all people. So in like any reporting we give to parents, we try to provide a visual as well, because we know there's parents out there that if I handed them a table of numbers, they wouldn't know what it says, right? And so it's speaking up and saying things like that. So some people used to like, oh, can you do this math in your head? And I would say, no, actually I can't. I need a piece of paper. That's not my strength. And it's okay to own that and just embrace that you do know another way to do it. And so that's the kind of power that comes from this method and understanding how you learn.
Yeah. What you just said is interesting because when you presented it at the virtual summit, you showed something that was really helpful to me that I took back to my team, of where you showed like where all company revenue goes and everything like that, and I modeled off of what you did and created the same kind of visual graphics so that everybody could see it that way. And I think you're right. I think it's important that we ask people how they learn best and how they understand and communicate, and then also honor that in ourselves. And until this conversation, I think I've just like pushed through most of it.
Mm-hmm.
And not really taken time to self-reflect and go, oh, how do I learn best, or what's easiest for me to learn? Because I'm, for the last like 4 or 5 years, been learning Spanish, and I'm fairly fluent in Spanish, and I wanted to pick up a third language, and I started and then I just stopped because the person that was tutoring me, I could tell was totally misaligned to my learning style, but I can't tell you what my learning style is with language either.
Mm-hmm.
I just
Mm-hmm.
knew it was off, and it was really uncomfortable. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
How do you, what are the type, you've touched on a little bit, but I'm curious, like, how do you determine how a kid learns best, or any person really, but obviously you work with kids? Is there a way that you go through and determine what their best approach is, or do you just constantly mix multiple approaches and they just absorb naturally, or how does that work?
Yeah, because of the way we do our lesson plan and that approach, it does kind of build in automatically multiple touch points, and the student is going to connect to various ones at certain times.
Gotcha.
I will say the majority of our students need those heavy visuals and that gross motor to help connect with what's happening. But over time, the others start to kind of play a role in it too. The language we use is really different too. If you were to listen in on our sessions, the rate at which we speak is a lot slower, so that we give kids process time. There's sometimes some long, awkward pauses of quiet while
Yeah.
the kid's processing, and we never rush to rescue them or let it, make them feel like they can't do this. But as far as how we figure it out, we do it a couple different ways. First, we sometimes, if the parent's willing to share, if they have like what's called an educational evaluation, these are psychological tests that tells us how their brain is processing information. So we look at those, and again, we typically see kind of patterns like the students are kind of off the charts in their visual spatial reasoning. But then we can see some other depressed areas, like that their working memory is weak. Working memory is like holding information and using it in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know, okay, based on this kid's going to need lots of visuals, but they're also going to need what we call a near point reference. I use those all the time, actually, near point references, because I think I have a weakening working memory. In fact, like that was partly why, Gabe, before the call, I asked you, like, well, what do you want to talk about? So I could make a near point reference for myself to support my memory.
Yeah.
But thankfully, you put me at ease. I don't necessarily need it as much. I need it more when I'm in an anxiety state. And that's what the kids need too. But a near point reference will have things that they can have nearby, like on the screen or on a table in front of them, with diagrams and words and things to help them remember how to do those things. So we use that, the educational psychological testing, but then we also have our own assessment. And our assessments are really different. We used to use like a standardized one that you could like buy in the marketplace. And then we made our own because we realized it didn't serve our students. So it's like one problem at a time. It's game-based. The kids are playing games. They're playing with manipulatives. And just from those things, our teachers are trained in how to figure out how the student's thinking, where I need to start. And then as they continue to keep working together, these teachers fine tune everything as they're going along.
That's cool. So the near point reference thing, that's really cool. What are some other things? I'm super curious about all this. So like, what are the other things that are mixed up in your process? Because that's something, I have no labels or language for any of what you do.
Sure.
And so I'm super
have to be careful not to talk too much teacher talk at you.
No, I want to hear it all.
Another thing we do, and I told Alex about this, another skill we use is called subitizing. When I was trying to explain it to Alex, he says, that's cool. What's subitizing? I want to do that. That's really cool. Subitizing is something we do, and you're not necessarily aware of it. So it's like the dice patterns that you see on dominoes and on dice themselves. And the most useful subitizing patterns are up to 6. So students that come to us that are struggling, a lot of them struggle assigning that the numeral, the number, is matching to like a quantity. And so one way we start teaching this is through that subitizing, so that they can start seeing quantity and grasping it really quickly. And when we subitize, it frees up that working memory, the using the information and knowledge. So I'll tell you a quick story about subitizing and how I use it still as an adult. One day I was putting together packages to mail out to students. We needed like all hands on deck. We were mailing out just tons of packages to our students. And we had these little circle discs that we needed to put into a package and make groups of 10. And I'm in the kitchen just trying to count to 10 as fast as I can. But my own children keep coming in the room and interrupting me. And every time I'm like, oh, you guys, I keep losing my count. This is going to take forever. And I was like, hands in the air, like, for the love of, and then as my hands came down, I went, Subitizing. So I start grabbing groups of 2 and I make patterns of 5 on the counter. And then I could swoop those the 2s in groups of 5, right? The pattern of 5, and put them in a package. And I didn't have to count anymore. And so it's a powerful tool, and everyone needs to know how to subitize. Subitize means seeing quantities instantly is what it means. And it's something that we start doing as infancy. We see a quantity, and babies can tell which one's more. They might not be able to know the quantity name, right? They don't know that, but they can tell which one's more. So that's kind of where it begins and it starts. And then over time, people without like a different brain wiring struggle with that, and they need to be taught it explicitly. So that's one tool that we're using. Another one that we use is the specificity in language. I mentioned that. We do stuff called word study with kids. So as you know, math is like another language. It feels like a totally foreign language.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of the words that were created were based off of Greek and Latin. And so we teach students before the new concept that is going to be taught to them that day, the keywords they need to know and how they break down and what they mean. So the word fraction has the base in it called fract, which means to break. So we'll do like a gross motor activity and we'll break something together and talk about fract, means to break, and we're going to break it together. So those kinds of things pop up in our lessons as well. But those near point references are huge. We do these other things called graphic organizers. We have really snappy language that we use for teaching, like solving equations. There's this 4-step process, and you get it really snappy to the point that you just could say keywords and kids will remember. So if we were solving for X, Gabe, we would say, who's messing with my X? And middle schoolers love this. They just giggle, giggle, giggle. And heaven forbid if the variable is the letter P, who's messing with my P? They just think it's so funny. And then you identify the variable. Okay, how are they messing with my P? Through multiplication. What's the opposite of that? Division. Okay, we're going to do it to both sides. And then we repeat the process, right? So we can get it down to who, how, and so on, both sides. It gets really snappy along the way. And the students have visuals that go with this. And all they need as a support to jog that memory is sometimes just that keyword, who, how, both sides. And so that kind of stuff makes a huge difference in the outcome for them. And it's so fun to see our students learn all these cool things, all these little snappy tricks. And recently, one of my teachers that teaches high levels of math was saying it was really fun to watch all those things that we did over the years come to a culmination in Algebra 2. And he's just rocking it and just working with these quadratics like it's no big deal. And this is a kid who struggled with math greatly, right? So it's really empowering. Like all these things build on each other. And that's the thing that we teach stuff that you can use forever.
That's awesome. My brain's lighting up. Do you teach adults?
I have been asked that, and I would love to do that. But I'm like, how do you market that? That's a whole other avatar.
No, I'm not trying to change your business model, but it makes me think about that. Because like to be honest, to this day, I still have no idea what the point of algebra is. I've never it's like I don't even understand. Conceptually, I get it a little bit, but I don't even know the point of it. And that's where I just totally stopped for me. I had no tools or no ability and no language to even dive into it. And I've been told that I do some algebra. Like I'm pretty functional, up to that level, but it's just something that was totally confusing to me. And what you just described sounds like it's such an amazing, just an amazing process for these kids to feel empowered and learn. And I'm sure I know some famous person said it, but I do believe like the universe is made of math. Like it's like and nature connects like logically, and like there's just so many things that are really cool to be able to see there. But without the foundation, you can't speak that language, like you said.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And I chuckle inside. I saw a cartoon recently of like a diagram going like this. And they're talking about all the different kinds of math that we learn, all the really hard stuff, the differentials and whatnot. And then it has a box over here that says spreadsheets. And it says, as an adult, this is what I do. I took all this math and all I do is spreadsheets. And made me laugh because that speaks to me. That's probably what you do too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is, you are doing more algebra than you realize.
Yeah.
And when you're a business owner, you're looking at the numbers and your estimation skills are so much better than you think. And without realizing it, you're like adjusting things and playing with these tools of algebra to help make sense of what's going on in your business.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier, but remind me, how many team members do you have now?
16.
Wow.
Yeah. I have an amazing team, Gabe. I am just gushing. I am so in love with them. To think I was afraid. What was I afraid of? They're amazing.
Yeah. No, I went through the same thing. I think that unfortunately there's people that are trying to, I mean, you went through it, I went through it too, but I think there's so many people out there that just complain about their team and, and make it sound like it's this horrible thing. And then I've come to learn, well, they're not a very effective leader. So of course they have, issues with their team, but yeah, I feel the same way. I think I have the most amazing team in the world, and it's so cool that they let me work with them. So, and so and you guys do everything virtually, right? With the kids. So has it always been that way?
Always. And it will continue to be so. I started the company that way because I recognized, like, I could have went and started a physical tutoring center, right? But that only provides services to mostly kids in that area, at least when I started, right? Zoom tutoring was a new concept back then.
Right.
When I really started playing around with it was back in 2016 when Zoom finally added some of the functionality I needed. And so I realized once they had that functionality, I'm going all in online, because then kids in small mountain towns and in remote areas have access to the service. That was my goal. As many kids as possible. I'm not kidding about that.
Yeah. That's awesome. And is it primarily in the States, or do you guys do stuff internationally?
We do stuff internationally. Yeah. We've got some kids that we've had kids like in Kuwait and in Africa. It's so fun. We've had a few Canadians. As long as the time matches up, because my teachers are US based, we're willing to work with them. And so so far it's working out pretty dang well.
That's awesome. And is your team all across the country, or are they all close to you?
No, they're all over the place. We've got a bunch on the East Coast and a bunch of West Coasters and a bunch of Texans, actually. When I went to the mastermind meetup that you and I got to see each other, I had a bunch of team members come and meet me for dinner at our I think it was meant for our mastermind, but I just invited them. I'm like, come eat a burger with me. And so, yeah, we're kind of all over the place. But we do find a way to meet each other every day for our daily huddle, even though we're virtual.
That's awesome. Yeah, we do the same thing. We're worldwide, and we all get on the same time every morning. And it's something I've come to really love. I wasn't sure how that was going to go when we first rolled out our daily huddle, but it's definitely just a great connection point. I love seeing everybody, and we're a similar thing. I think since 2014, I went virtual. And so fortunately the last couple of years weren't anything new for us either.
Yeah. So. Same. Yeah.
What would you say to the parents out there who have have struggled with their kids, in math and everything, and have just kind of run out, feel like they're out of options, or frustrated, or have tried to force their kid to do homework or whatever? All of us parents obviously do our best and try what we can, but what would you say to them about, you've obviously found a successful path here. So obviously I think they should work with you. And on top of that, what would be your encouragement to those parents that have kids that have been struggling with math?
Yeah. So when kids are struggling with math, like when you hear your child say, "What's the point? This is stupid," and they storm off, that is not them being a stick in the mud and trying to stick it to you. That's not what's going on. Underneath the surface, there is what we call an academic wound present. somewhere in their path that they have not told you about, they receive the message that math is not for me because I'm not fast, I'm not accurate, and therefore what's the point? And I don't have worth. So instead of being mad and being like, get back here, rah, 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 and just be more forceful with them, that's not the right approach. You need to address that those emotions are happening with your child. And so we counsel our parents to sustain that relationship as much as possible and hear them out. And no homework is going to get done in a state of anxiety like that. And so if you can meet your child where they're at, help lower that anxiety, and then try homework again, it'll go better for you. But also, I would encourage you, if those academic wounds are present, yeah, come find a professional to help you, because there is something bigger going on. We do get students that have just really high levels of math anxiety. And once they start working in our method, they just take off and they're not here that long with us. That's our goal. Our goal is not to keep you here for years and years and years. We want to get you stable, build the foundation, and shoot you off back to school. And so the work that we do is not homework based. Unfortunately, I wish I could tell parents I'm going to relieve your homework woes right away. That's actually not what happens. They come in, we find out where the holes are, and we start filling them in, and all the tides rise together with that. And so then we start hearing reports, students are performing better on their tests, even though they aren't working on that skill with their math specialists. So it's a proven method, it works, it's effective. But even if you don't hire us, there's books you can read and get help with. When we're done with this, I'd be happy to drop those in the comments so parents feel like they have some resources they could go look at. Because I understand, not everyone has the time or the resources to be able to dedicate to come work with us. But if you do, it's worth every penny. I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you. I think that's good advice. And it's definitely, like I said, this is just something that's near to my heart because I've gone through it and have, struggled figuring out my own brain. And I've never heard what you just said either before, like having an academic wound. And I think that's a very accurate description of what so many of us have gone through. And it doesn't have to stay that way. And so I'm just really grateful that you created your company and we're willing to hire people so you can help even more people. And it's, I think what you're doing is just making such a positive impact. And like I said in the beginning too, I just really enjoy hearing you talk about your team, your company, what you offer. I can always tell the leaders around me that are consistently growing, and you're one of them. And
Thank you.
It's fun to see how your business is growing, and just the way that you show up and share is really refreshing. And so I appreciate you taking time with us today. As we're wrapping up here, is there anything else that you would like to share with anybody, or anything we didn't cover?
No, I think we covered it all. I mean, there's so much we could talk about, but if parents want to learn more about what we do, we've got tons of resources over on our website, lots of YouTube videos. You can come check us out. Yep, I see it on the screen, madeformath.com. It's the best place to get started. But parents, feel free to DM me if you have questions. Feel free to bother me. I don't mind it. I love to interact with parents and help them see what's possible with their child.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Adrianne. I appreciate you being on, and I'm sure we'll do a follow-up show, in another 6 months or a year and see where things are at. But yeah, I would just highly encourage everybody listening and tuning in today, definitely check out madeformath.com. That's where you can learn all about what Adrianne and her team do. And again, I appreciate you taking time today. Thank you.